Oh, it sounds like an entire orchestra when I do that, doesn't it? You can hear the bass, bum bum bum. And then you can hear the strings. Watching CPAC? No, I haven't watched much. I'm waiting for the highlights. So, does it feel to you like this was sort of a turning point week? Felt a little bit turning pointy? And when I mean turning point, I mean the death of the Trump is Hitler meme that we had to live with for 2 years. And there are several components to this. Now, component number one is that a year has passed and he didn't do any Hitler stuff. What? His critics tell me. What do you mean he didn't do any Hitler stuff? Look at all the Hitler stuff he did. I'm going to list them all. There was a time he criticized the media for being inaccurate, which feels a lot like the First Amendment. And all of those media entities that he criticized got stronger because of the attention and because he's interesting and people watch their news. So he strengthened the news while accurately pointing out that some of it is inaccurate. Now, he may have overstepped which parts are inaccurate, but keep in mind that's what they're doing to him. So it does seem to me, here, I'll get rid of you. It does seem to me that his critics are running out of steam. If the best that they can come up with in terms of how Hitler-like he is that he criticized CNN for biased coverage, which literally 100% of the people said, well, yeah, they do have biased coverage. You know, Fox has biased coverage the other way. CNN has biased coverage that way. He added absolutely nothing to our national understanding. He just decided not to lay down and take it because he didn't need to. So the new part was that he didn't lay down and take it. The new part is that he used his First Amendment right to speak out on things he doesn't like. And those entities got stronger, not weaker, and he's fine with that. Do you think he cares that the press has good ratings and business is good? I don't think so. You know, I don't think that's bothering him. All right, so you have that. And then, of course, you had the tax bill, which made it look like, you know, something important was getting done. And that went directly to the, you know, can he govern? Can he get anything done? And that consolidated the Republican base. So we watched him go from roughly, within the Republican side, conservative side, we watched him go from maybe a 10% approval rating, just within, just on the side of, we saw him about 10% approval, just on the side of the conservatives when he first entered the race. Probably 10% thought he was serious and liked him. That quickly grew to like 18% as soon as people said, oh yeah, he's really trying to do this. And then he went from about 18%, again, just for that portion of the conservative side of the world, to now closer to, I'm guessing that his support on the Republican conservative side is closer to 90%, wouldn't you say? I don't know exactly, but it's probably close to 90%, somewhere in that, you know, range. So when people say, well, as they often do, I'm going to go back to the classic Dale. If he's such a master persuader, why isn't he persuading the country to have better approval ratings? Is the question I get quite often. And the answer is he's gone from 10% approval just with Republicans, which is something like 5% approval. Follow me on the math. I'm being very general. I know Republicans are less than half of the country, but speaking very generally, he went from about 5% approval to Rasmussen has him at 50% today. That's the poll that came out. Now, Rasmussen tends to be the generous one, at least for Trump. But directionally, it's probably true that if one of the big polls is showing him improving, probably the other ones are too. So in very general terms, his popularity over 2 years has improved by, he's gone from 5 to 50%. That's a 10 times improvement in approval. 10 times from the time he entered the race. A 10x improvement. And it's rising. So the first part of his journey had to be to consolidate his base, which he has now unambiguously done. All right, everyone agrees on both sides that his base is behind him now. You're even seeing senators say, well, I used to be against him, but I think I need his help now. All right. So you've got that going. And then my favorite thing was people were tweeting the photo of him holding his note cards when he was at the gun listening event at the White House. And one of the things on the card said something like that he hears you or something like that. And people thought, my God, there it is. It's evidence that he has no brain. He has to carry his brain on an external piece of paper given to him by other brains so that he can simply read it. And so they tweeted that, and I retweeted that, and I said, well, this is a big promotion from being Hitler. You know, a year ago he was Hitler, and today he's a guy that goes to a meeting well prepared because he has notes. I mean, think about that. There's no exaggeration here at all. I'm giving you the literal description of what it was a year ago. Hitler, Hitler, Hitler. That's true, right? You heard Hitler all the time a year ago. And then yesterday we heard this criticism that he went to an important meeting that even his critics say went really well, the meeting itself, and he was well prepared. He had notes. That's it. That's the criticism. So after I retweeted my criticism of the criticism, you've all heard of David Frum. Everybody knows that name, right? David Frum, F-R-U-M. He tweets back to me, responds to my tweet with a photo of Hitler holding a little note card. I swear to God that happened. He actually tweeted me Hitler holding a little note card. Now, sometimes it's hard to know what winning looks like. You don't always know what winning looks like. Sometimes there's a little judgment call. But if your critics confirm the biggest ridiculous stereotype about them, and they do it unapologetically, like they're not joking. If you create this like ridiculous stereotype of your enemy, and you say, that guy is always like, hitting himself in the head with a stick, he's so dumb. And let's say that's never happened. Let's say the person you're saying about that has never hit himself in the head with a stick because he's not really that dumb. That's just your exaggerated, funny stereotype of him. And then your enemy picks up a stick and starts beating himself in the head with it. Well, that would be an example of you winning. That would be winning, all right? Now, the stereotype joke about the right, or the left, I'm sorry, Frum gets me confused, because he's been on both sides. The stereotype is that they'll see Hitler in anything. Like just laughingly, you see Hitler in your shadow, you see Hitler in the leaves, you see Hitler in the clouds, you see Hitler everywhere, so therefore you're ridiculous. And then your nemesis finds Hitler in a cloud. All right? If that's what happens, if your nemesis embraces the most hilarious stereotype about themselves, unapologetically, like no irony, not trying to make a joke, I'm not being self-conscious of the fact that you say this about me. You actually are doing it with all seriousness. Somebody said, let's toast to that. I think you're right. By now you should have your coffee. Let us toast to the tears of our enemies. Tears. Now, it has been suggested by very smart people that I should have my own brand of coffee called Tears of Your Enemies. While I love that idea, the problem is that nobody wants to feel like they're drinking tears. So it's like 50% best idea you ever heard, with that little bit of marketing-wise, nobody wants to drink tears. So it kind of wouldn't work in the long run, but it's awesome. So the other big news, of course, is Trump's listening meeting with the victims and families of the Florida shooting. Now, the news coverage I saw showed both sides, even his critics saying, "Oh my God, that actually is good. We loved watching people in a respectful environment," because having it at the White House was actually brilliant, right? That was the place to have it, because it elevated the importance of the meeting, but also it had a second effect, which is it kept everybody on their best behavior. So you had everything going there. And it also gave full respect to the people on the other side. Now, I've been saying for a while that the criticisms, and again, this is Greg Gutfeld pointed this out well, that his experience as the president's experience as a reality TV star is not a deficit. It's just another asset he brings to the job, and you've seen him use that skill set time and time again to good effect. This was another example. Now imagine, if you will, a slightly different setup, but imagine him doing that for other topics, right? Because that meeting is what allowed him to do what no president has ever figured out how to do. You're watching something that takes, I know I'm the big Trump booster, so I always have to be careful when I feel myself going into hyperbole, maybe accidentally. I have to be careful and engage myself, because it's easy to be optimistic without being reasonable. It's real easy to let that happen. You just get carried away with the team you're associated with. But here's what I think we just watched. I think we just watched President Trump go to the next level. This is a whole new level. And what I mean by that is he started out by getting some purchase in the far right. So his whole campaign started with, I'll say the most conservative, aggressive, far right thing I can say. I'll get a foothold. That got him enough to get nominated. And then I'd been saying since the very beginning, and really the justification from the beginning for where I could say favorable things about candidate Trump, now President Trump, it always had this as a backdrop, that he was going to move the right to the middle. I always said he was the guy who was going to move the right to the middle. So if you were on the left, you could have no better friend than the guy who was going to move your most intransigent population toward you. All right? He's the only one who could do that. Nobody likes to use, Nixon goes to China because we use it too much, but it is sort of a perfect example for this, right? I saw, was it Kurt Schlichter, however you say his name, saying that the reason the right was not freaking out about President Trump at least floating and considering various gun control, tweaks, the reason they weren't freaking out is because they trust him. Think about that. They trust him not to go too far. They trust that President Trump is not doing phase one of taking all your guns away. So actually trust turned out to be the primary tool here that's getting him to this middle where both sides are looking at it and saying, not bad. That middle, it's not bad. You can't even imagine that with another president, can you? Now, this is what I've described as pacing and leading. Pacing is a step where you embrace the person you're trying to persuade, and you become so much like them that they can't tell the difference between you and them. It's like your mind, my mind, it's the same mind. You have a thought, I have a thought. We're thinking the same things at the same time about the same stuff. You and I have one brain. All right? That's pacing. It's used in hypnosis, it's used in persuasion, it's used in politics. And you just watched the president pace the bejesus out of the right. Then, once he had their trust, what could he do that other presidents couldn't do? Because he'd paced them so well. He can move to a little bit of gun control, but don't go crazy. And he could go to a little bit of, well, those DACA guys and girls, maybe we let the DACA people in if we can get some other things we want. All right? Imagine somebody on the right trying even to get away with that. And he is getting away with it. So, I think you're seeing something which is next level. And when I say next level, here's what I mean. If you were to sort the presidents out, with the advantage of hindsight, so you could look at all the presidents of the United States through history from lots of distance. You're just a historian, lots of time has passed, and now you're looking at a distance. Until this gun control thing happened and the meeting at the White House, and now I'm assuming that there will be some laws that actually get enacted and people will like them on both sides. I believe that this president was sort of stuck with the mass presidents that, are sort of just floating around on the lower levels, the ones you don't think about too much. And then, at our higher levels, you've got, your Lincolns and your Washingtons, and, you can fill in the blanks of whichever ones you think are at the top tier. But there's sort of a middle tier between them. And I believe that Trump has just elevated out of the masses, the most presidents class, the generic, most presidents, they come and they go, and they didn't change too much. But very few are, Washington, win a revolution, Lincoln, win a civil war. You don't get too many of those. But it seems to me that Trump just leveled up. Because he has gone to the middle and now successfully with acclaim from both sides, frankly. It's a very unusual situation. It's entirely possible that the conversation about this president forever will be, well, nobody else could do that. That was just something that no one else could do. All right. Look at the news out of North Korea today. I don't know if you saw it. It's just breaking news. The president, I think, is going to announce it at CPAC, if he hasn't already, that there will be aggressive new sanctions, ones we haven't even seen before, on companies, not countries, companies doing business with North Korea. Now, you may remember that a long time ago, I said, a couple years ago, I think, that the way to get to North Korea is not by co-opting countries such as China, although that's part of the solution, of course, because you can't get China to do what it needs to do against its own corporations. And that would be true probably for a lot of different countries. The government just doesn't have that much control over what happens to, say, a tanker once it leaves port. Once the tanker leaves port, does President Xi have any control over it? Yeah, a little, but it's hard. So I had been saying from the start that if the president set it up right, he could go after companies directly, which has never happened before. All right, it's happened before, but not on the scale it's happening. The scale makes it a completely different situation. And to do that, he first had to have good relations with Russia and China. Right? That was necessary. In order to go after individual companies, he first had to pace the leaders of the countries so that he gives them, respect. Done. He gives them respect, right? Done. He gets good relationships with them. Some say he has too good a relationship with Putin. The problem is that it's too good, if anything. And he has good relationships with China. Now, having done that, and then he says, all right, first right of action. You guys, some of these are your companies, I think less Russia, more China perhaps, but I'm sure both countries have some companies acting badly. He said, I'll give you plenty of time. We'll give you information. We'll give you our satellites. If these are your companies, shut them down. Okay, you tried. Well, let's try again. I'll give you more information. We really want you to shut down these companies. Okay, you tried twice, 3 times. You couldn't shut down the companies. So now we will. So who else could have done that? So now he's going directly after the companies that do business with North Korea. A complete shift. It redefines warfare. We're in the middle of World War III right now. It's not a world war because not enough countries are involved. But we are in the middle of a large war happening as we sit here. It just doesn't happen to involve bullets. He found a way there's Boo. He found a way to wage effective war. Now, I think it'll be effective. It's early, but it looks like it would be, without shooting bullets. Now, a lot of people are probably going to die in North Korea because of starvation. But that's also not his problem. It's simply not his problem. And he's taking America First seriously. Let me ask you this. I'm sorry. Does Trump's America First policy give him extra flexibility in dealing with North Korea? Does it? It does. America First allows President Trump to say, what we're doing probably will kill untold number of people in North Korea. And guess what? That's North Korea's problem. That's not our problem. Yes, what we're doing might cause a catastrophe of refugees leaving North Korea for China. Guess what? It's not our problem. Could we be more clear about that? There's your problems. Here's our problems. America First says we recognize that our problems are not your problems are not our problems. We're going to work on our problems. And guess what? That's going to cause a big problem for you. And you know what? The big problem for you, not our problem. And, moreover, we would love for you guys to work on your problems. In fact, if you'd like some help working on your problems, we can help. But don't make your problem my problem, because it's not. He did that. I don't know what other president could have so clearly created a situation where North Korea has now moved from unsolvable to, right? Now, it's certainly early to say that North Korea is solvable. That's early. But for the first time in my life, I look at the current situation, the way it's shaping up, and I say, that does look solvable now. For the first time ever, the strategy that's being employed looks completely effective. Now, the trick, of course, is that you never let your foot off the pedal. And if you had another president, you could imagine, something will happen and he'll take his boot off of their necks. I don't see any chance that President Trump will take his boot off of their necks. I don't see any chance of that. I suppose if something big changed, of course, but short of that, first time ever, Scott knows nothing about history. Well, I do know that we've never done anything this aggressively against the commerce of North Korea. At least when I say never, I mean in the past 30 years or since I've been paying attention. So now the news comes out that there seems to be an allegation, and I'm going to call it an allegation because I'd like to hear the other side first, that the police officer, the resource officer who was at the school in Florida, may have not acted. He may have waited outside when he could have acted and maybe saved some lives. Now, the details we have are very damning. But I warn you all, and no matter what situation is going on, I warn you all to always wait for the other side. Now, the fact that he immediately retired, the accused, and he's on video not going in, and we know he was armed, and eyewitness reports and all the rest, it seems unlikely that there's another side to this. It looks like he was just a guy who was close to retirement and wanted to make it to retirement. And he was afraid. Yeah, it looks like he was maybe just afraid. But I want to hear his side. I'd love to hear his side of that. Now, it has not been lost on you, I believe, that from the beginning of this event, the things the anti-gun people were saying is that having guns on campus doesn't help you. Just look at this situation. There was an armed cop, and having a gun didn't make any difference because it was a big campus. Well, it turns out that wasn't exactly true. It turns out that having a gun absolutely would have, maybe cut the damage in half. It absolutely would have, had it been used. Now, obviously, it wasn't the gun that was the problem, it was the humans. People always say guns don't kill, people kill. Well, in this case, the officer was the weak link. It wasn't the gun. The gun was actually doing its job. The gun had bullets, the gun was with him, the gun functioned, the gun could be fired. The gun was even in the right place. Roughly. He didn't go inside, but the gun did everything the gun needed to do. It was the human who fell down, allegedly. I still want to hear his side. I can't imagine why his side would be that would make anything better, but it's often true that you can't imagine what the reason would be. And I might have to go downstairs in a minute. So anyway, let me back up to my larger theme. I don't see the number of viewers on here. It looks like it disappeared. So my metric for number of viewers just disappeared off my screen. What's up with that? Can you tell how many viewers are on here? Do you see it on your screen? 1.3? Yeah, it doesn't show up on mine for some reason. Unless it's behind all the hearts. I'm getting a lot of hearts, so it might be hidden back there. So here's my grander picture. President Trump has gone from 5% approval in the country to about half, roughly speaking. And he's done that in 2 years. His progress seems to continue, meaning that he's picked up support. He's done it with the tax bill. He's done it by not being Hitler for a year. And he's doing it by reaching across and being clearly bipartisan. The gun control stuff is bipartisan. The immigration thing is bipartisan enough that people notice. He's certainly bipartisan enough that everybody noticed he was giving up more than they expected. So at this point, it's going to get harder and harder to criticize him for being ineffective, because he's clearly effective. Clearly. The question of whether he's effective is now shrunken from, something like this. Oh, we think he's going to be ineffective, and in the early days, his White House apparently was disorganized, but there's a reason for that. He had no support from Republicans when he took office, so he didn't have much of a pool to pick from. But now, it's going to be kind of hard. Going to be kind of hard to say he's ineffective. So that's shrunk down quite a bit. The sheriff had pictures with Clinton. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, the deputy was outgunned, but But yeah, all he had to do was open up a second front and people could run, right? Like all he had to do is distract the shooter in the other direction, which could have been real dangerous because he was outgunned. But he would have saved lives. You know, unfortunately, he was in a job where putting your life on the line is the job. You know, that's the job description. Yeah, maybe. All right, I'm out. I will talk to all of you later. It looks like Trump is going to a new level. We'll see if that holds. It's sort of too early to say, but it's looking like that at this point. I'll talk to you later.